How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. Okay, so tell folks your name.
My name is G. Williams. My real name is Javante Williams.
Okay.
Everybody calls me G.
Everybody calls you G. Why?
It's funny. I think growing up, became easier for people to remember. I started going by G in football, and so when I went to college, went to play football. Didn't play all 4 years, but when I got there, just kind of stuck with a lot of more people. So some people who call me Vante, or if they call me my whole name, I'm like a jerk because I'm like, you don't know me from Houston or college, so you must be before that, or family. So
Giovante.
Yeah, Javante.
Javante.
You see why I go by G? You see why I go by G? I don't have a problem at all because I'm not one of those people like, get my name right. My dad always kind of raised me like, you chill, like let water roll off your back,
right?
Which I don't do well yet.
And I go through that struggle too because I will say my name and then people will say Melissa or Matilda or all these kind of variations and Melida is the one that I get the most, and so I try to really enunciate the T in my name, and it's just whatever, just call me whatever. I get it.
Yes.
But anyway, back to the task at hand. So tell me about your faith. Did you grow up in the church?
So a little yes and no. I grew up, my mom and dad have a great relationship, co-parenting. That mom Houston, dad Dallas. I went back and forth many times in my life. My mom was Christian, loved Jesus, wasn't a consistent churchgoer. My dad's side, same, but they went to church a lot. So growing up, I knew what church was. I did go to church, but there was a big period in my life where I didn't go to church. And when I did move to high school, I moved with my dad fully. We went to church every Sunday, but it was one of those churches where the kids are kind of like have autonomy. And so literally, like after we sang, I literally just always walk out in the back playing with the kids. So I don't feel like I didn't get sermons. I didn't get a lot of theology. I didn't get a lot of, Christian messages outside of what my dad did teach me. My dad taught me a lot of things, but I just think I missed it. And so I don't feel like I'm a typical church kid. I have a mixture a little bit. I know what it is, but when I went to college, that's when I really know I'm not a church kid. Like I clearly see that there's a lot of songs I don't know, a lot of formalities I didn't know, a lot of things about scripture that I didn't know.
And you found that out in college?
Mm-hmm.
How is that? I mean, well, the reason I'm confused because my college experience had nothing to do with church. I went to college and, I went to a Catholic school for one.
Oh.
So there was mass and I didn't understand. So I just stopped going.
Yeah.
So you went to church when you were in college?
Yeah. So in high school, around the age of 14, I had started before then, the concept of God was more like cartoonish. God, I prayed when I got in trouble, kind of thing. I didn't really pray because I wanted a relationship with God. By the age of 14, through some science and study, a science kid, I began to adopt and eventually fully adopt the concept of evolution without the deity of the Father. Of course, there's, you can believe in evolution and the faith, but for me, it was no God. And probably by the age of 16, I started going through the motions. I was very afraid to let people know that I didn't believe in God. So I put on the front a lot of times because in some ways they had a lot of expectations for me being a successful person and a man of faith. So there were times, I remember one time for one period in high school, I was literally walking around with a Bible and never read it. Like I literally I was identity crisis. But by the age of 16, I had started really adopting that. Didn't tell my parents at all. By the age of 17, same thing. Before I graduated high school, I had a crazy encounter through some family issues. The Lord delivered my pain miraculously. I always say I was blessed to really have one of those miracle Paul-like experiences. Not that I met Jesus, but that he through the power, just literally took hatred from my heart, and I felt him. I heard his voice in the way that I hear it, the way I heard it. I felt him talking to me because of the pain that I was dealing with, the depressing state I was in. I gave my life to Jesus right before I graduated high school, so I was on fire when I went to God, went to college, and then so when I got to college, I started opening up Scripture and realized I didn't know anything. I didn't know anything except the Prince of Egypt from the movie. And I knew a little bit because I was in the plays, the Easter plays in high school a little bit with the Easter. But I really didn't understand. A lot of it was like mythology to make it simple.
So you share that voice of God experience. I had one as well. My dad's kind of abusive. And I grew up, you never knew what you were going to get. And he's an alcoholic. And there was one day where he was in a drunken stupor on the sofa, and he was asleep, like, the fumes of whiskey coming off of him. And I picked up a knife and put it to his throat with the intent of killing him. And I was probably 14, 15 maybe. And I had that voice of God moment where God said to me, I have much more in store for you, and not to do it.
Yeah.
And, I don't tell that to a lot of people now. I'm about to put it on the internet, but it's the thing that made me know that God was real.
Yeah.
I know the Bible seems like this really antiquated thing, and that's why I love the teaching around here. It really does apply to your life. God still speaks.
Yeah.
So it's good to know I'm not alone.
Yeah.
That there really are those, because you can, after a while you can be like, was that really God? Or, know.
Yeah.
So.
No, man, absolutely. Mine's very similar to it. Out of respect, I won't go into too much detail because there's so much forgiveness. And on my end that we had to wrestle through, and God is just good in that way. Just in case, they see this. But the blessing is, and the thing is, my family, I won't sit here and act like they didn't speak God to me. There were times where they told me to pray, or my dad, for example, he man, the Lord, this is the way the Lord works. On the football field, he'd be like, sometimes the Lord works in mysterious way. He would say stuff like that a lot. And so it was like not this lack of God at all. He was there. I think that for me, it wasn't personal, and I thought it could be, but by the time I was in the deep depth of my high school, I knew laying down in the bed, I didn't have him. I knew that I didn't believe in him. And when I got up the next days, I thought to myself, when I go to college, I'm going to finally fully be me. And that was my thought. And God just encountered it. And similar to you, how he stopped you from doing something that you may regret, it was similar to me, where he basically was like, all this hatred, I'm going to take it out of your heart, and I'm going to show you how I have plans for you. When I came to believe, that was the first time I cried since the age of 11. And 17 to 11, I hadn't shed a tear. And when I came to believe, I got home, opened up the Bible, and started reading from the beginning, and was lost. And I was like, maybe the Bible isn't God's word. Maybe I just have to believe in Jesus. And in that moment, whether it was my feelings, or it was my voice, or whether it was God, I felt in my spirit, pick the Bible up again and just flip it open. I literally and went to John 15 and 16. It says, you did not choose me, but I chose you to go and bear fruit. And I felt in that moment, I just fell back in my seat, like, God, I feel like you just spoke to me again. Like, why? Like, I remember tearing up, like, this is why God came to make me believe or help me believe, because you have plans for me.
Right.
And that was really powerful for me to kind of experience that, like knowing that He thought about me. And when I do evangelize and talk to some people who don't believe, I kind of come from that angle that God has plans for you. Like He is thinking about you, He cares about you, and He sees everything. And for some people, hopefully it'll hit them different.
It's difficult these days, though, to walk the walk, right? There's a lot of resistance. I mean, America is supposed to be this great nation that was built on Christianity, but when you say you're a Christian today, you get a lot of resistance. So how do you navigate that?
That's a really good question. I won't say I figured it out just fully yet, but I would say that, for one, I try to stand firm in the word when it talks about how, like, when the world stands against you, I'm with you. How, in a sense, it's inevitable. I do believe in eschatologically, the signs of the times and things. I may not believe everything the way a lot of people believe, but I do believe that God still has so many things that He will fulfill through Scripture in our times. And I take the personal belief that eventually it will be Christians against death. Maybe not in our lifetime, but I believe that at some point it's going to be that. And so as we get closer to that, I stand firm, like, God, I'm with you till I die. But I think more in the social way and just kind of keeping relationships with people and stuff like that, I try to remember that God brought me from somewhere. And I try to make sure that I can try to keep a relationship. And something I tell myself is that a lot of times it's about values. Politics and things like that, it's just about different values. And it doesn't define the entire person. We're people built up of hundreds of values. Me and you, we share the faith very strongly about who Christ is, more than likely. But we probably are very different on our list of values. And probably even politically, we may differ. We may both vote for the same person, but it doesn't mean we care about the same thing.
Right. And I think that's been one of the things that has been so discouraging to me is, you have this political climate that has happened that has said just because you have a conservative viewpoint or a liberal viewpoint, that means you're opposed. Well, for me, none of that matters. God is love. That is the universal for me. But that's not how everybody operates. Do you struggle with that with different friends? Do different friends have different?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I agree with you, and I stand where you stand with that. But the interpretation of what love is very subjective. And for me, for example, I could say one of my higher values, I'm always caring about the low man. I'm always caring about the disenfranchised, the orphans, the widows. I'm not saying I do enough for them, but when it comes to politically, I care about that. I care about our education system. Those are things I really find myself caring about, right? But I do know that to invest time and money into that will probably put America into a different, more debt, which would potentially put us in more danger, which could potentially cause less jobs, which would potentially cause less positions and money to go back into the schools. So it's like the cycle effect. And how do I say it? Someone else could say, I care about love. All I care about is God's love. That's why I care about our financial system of America. I really care about our economy, and I want America to thrive because we're doing this. And I can't say that's not love,
right?
Because in their eyes, in the long run, we're better off, and they may not be wrong. But for me, as a person, I'm kind of a right now guy. Maybe that's to my demise, but I'm a right now person. I care about what I see in that moment, and if somebody's hurting in that moment, I just really.
And that's biblical. I mean, that's what God commands us to do. So you're okay there.
Yeah.
So the other thing that I know about you is that you're musically gifted. tell me how that has all had an effect in your walk.
Oh, had an effect in my walk. So come from a musical family, both ends really, but more on my dad's side. My dad's an amazing singer, grandfather, amazing singer. I mean, my dad was in a recording group, gospel group, and I always grew up singing. Didn't pick up an instrument till later in college, in my 20s, and I believe that it's interesting. I'm gonna answer it two ways and make it short. One way, music has been one of the reasons that I was able to kind of go deeper in faith because of my involvement with the church. I am not a typical, I did a lot of church in college, but a lot of people may not know about me is that I'm not a typical church guy. I really don't, mark my words, I really don't like church service much. Even now, I'm not, let me use my words better. It's not.
You're digging a hole
yeah,
here.
right.
Okay, let's get
cut
you out.
That. If I had a choice, and I'm not afraid to say this, if I had a choice to go to a church service or to have church fellowship, I'm a fellowship guy. So the service, the formalities, sometimes are so tiring, but not in a bad way. Not in the these are bad. It's something I know I need.
Is it? Well, I was going to ask. Is it because you're serving during the service?
Even when I'm not serving, it has a lot to do with my personality, and it has a lot to do with a certain discipline. It's a good discipline. It's good to stand, sit, and then worship, and then sit, and then sacrament, and sit.
Oh, okay.
And then 45-minute sermon where you can't even really respond to the pastor. He's talking to you. You may have questions, but you got to wait or maybe make a meeting with him to have the conversation. Those formalities, which aren't a bad thing because it's just the way things are right now. Those kind of things annoy me a little bit, but that's my thing. And the older I get, the more I realize it's a good thing. I'm learning the discipline is a really beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing to be disciplined in that. And so I'm not too foolish to think that I'm not too foolish to go, we shouldn't do it that way. I'm not trying to change that. But on the other end, music really kept me going. Because I think that if I didn't have music, one experience in my life, I stopped playing for a church. When I moved to Houston, I stopped playing for a church for about 3 years. And in that 3 years, I barely went to church. And it surprised me. Every Sunday came up and I was like, I'm not going to church today. And I looked back and I was like,
snap, it's been 3 years.
It was an instrument, it was the music that I went to church. And so when I came to Living Word, for those Living Word people listen, one reason I chose this church was because I said I want to go to church that if I'm not doing anything, I would still go. And this is a church that I would. I happen to serve, but if I didn't serve, I would still go.
I find that interesting because, during the pandemic where we couldn't be here, it drove me crazy. I missed being, because I actually like service.
Yeah.
I
we should.
enjoy.
Don't be me. Like we should. Now I like service. I'm not sitting here miserable. Like my words fail me. Please don't. I hope y'all got through this part.
No, we got you. We got you.
No, I like service. I love the people. I enjoy people. I enjoy people. When I come, I love to see people. I love to see the same people. And I guess that's more what it is.
Yeah. Are you an introvert or an extrovert?
Everybody thinks I'm an extreme extrovert, but I think that people who really pay attention to me, at the end of the day, I like a lot of alone time. I find myself being alone a lot. And I didn't realize until I was older that I'm probably a little bit more introverted than I thought, but I'm still on the spectrum of extrovert, I believe. I spent a lot of alone time. I never had an entourage, never had a group of people and things like that.
The musicality of your service is something that I admire. I think that for a long time in my maturation as a Christian, it was centered around music. Music spoke to me as when I was a kid. Growing up, I would tune out the sermon, it was the music that spoke to my heart.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times when we have service here, I'm spent by the time I get to hear pastor, because I've, praising through music just really speaks to my soul. And so that's why I love the people that can actually play, the musicians that God has actually gifted and blessed with those talents.
Yeah.
But there are others who have a talent and they sit on it. Do you feel like you've ever gone through a period where you knew God was calling you to use your talent and you didn't?
More than anybody would ever know. Yes, even now in my life. So, just God has given me a lot of different gifts. And I have not lived up to many of them for multiple reasons. It's an interesting question. It's just basically the simple answer is yes. Yeah, I for sure. Yeah, even my career, just so many things that I know I could do, and I constantly beat myself up because I don't want to pass with all these things and ideas that really could probably help a lot of people, as well as just really start a legacy of something. And so my goal now, really within this past few months, has been to do more in order to use these gifts. And I admire you a lot, because even this right here is something that I could have easily done, as far as like, sitting down with people. I think conversations is something that it really helps heal and inform. And I've wanted to kind of start a podcast and things like that. Even though a million people doing it, it don't mean that, hey, you can continue, right? But I just didn't. And every time I look at you, and I've done some film, I've done some plays and things like that in my life, and then I come to this church and you're on it. You use it, you do it. And if it's great, if it's big or if it's small, you're doing it. And
don't.
I'm praising God and how He's put a gift in you, and you are a good steward of